and we can figure out some other troubleshooting in the chat. So Sam, it is all you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I spoke with Ryan Oram last week, I think, or at least by email, and his thesis is usable. We're going to take the descriptions and put them up on Discover Life. The key is usable. Note that there are several new species, particularly in Hylaeus mesillae and Hylaeus modestus groups, roughly, that will be appearing. Hylaeus rudbeckiae, I think, is problematic, and it would be a good way to say that. It may or may not exist in the East. So a number of changes coming up. He said that he has been COVIDed, can't get a hold of type specimens, which he needs to wrap up a larger publication of Hylaeus, of at least Canada, hopefully of Canada and the United States. We will see. So stay tuned for that. His key is good. It assumes certain knowledge, but like we mentioned, I think last time, for those who did show up, keys often have insights because people discuss things in different ways. People have different observations about pathways through, and sometimes that resonates more with you than someone else. And sometimes it's just a good double check, like, well, I don't feel great about this specimen. Let me run it through a couple other keys and see what I come up with. At some point, maybe in the future, we'll have a compilation of keys, standalone keys extracted from all the different revisions and online things. But at the moment, that does not exist. That would be a good thing for us to do, but there's so many good things. All right, we're going to jump now to sharing the screen. I have successfully figured out a lot of the features of our new microscope / software. Thank you, Craig, for the help on that. And it's so much better because I can control the exposure. So I'm going to choose screen. We're going to, so see over here, I can actually lighten and darken this specimen by just clicking on some things. So I've purposefully burned out the light colors on that first one so that the dark colors are more visible. But we have now complete control. So this is really nice because we have tons of light here. So I think the problem was the auto exposure, for whatever reason, just decided to expose on down to super dark. So I'll also go to full screen here in a second. Well, I do that now. Control-Alt-Shift-F. Who does these kinds of shortcuts? All right, let me try that again. There we go. So this is a very typical male, with the exception of Hylaeus. What is it? AGI. Now I'm going to forget the name of it, but it's that's a Western species. Hylaeus, which may have this character, but we are going to be talking Eastern species here. So Hylaeus basilis, which is an all-black bee, the male has humongous scapes. So by the scape, this is the first antennal segment here. It's wide in the order of 5 or 6 times as wide, or nearly so, maybe 3 to 5 times as wide as the flagellar segments. Most of the action in males has to do with the face in some ways. So it's the pattern of light colored areas, which is also problematic because color and patterns of color seem to be the type of thing that can disappear or be modified very quickly, but it is still very useful. So how high the markings go above the antennal sockets, what the shape of the tips of these markings are like in the males, most, I think maybe all except for basilis, have yellow throughout this area. Some follow the boundary with the compound eyes. Others will actually literally curve around. And we should see a couple examples here. This is Hylaeus modestus. This and affinis are the most common species. Modestus, at least in the East, as far as my experience, indicates that modestus is far and away the most common. However, we know that there are more than one species in the modestus group. Let's see, Mike Arduzer, in his keys, which is again available through Clare's work, has the males separated between what he calls species A, and we denote a species A in the Discover Life Guide 2, and modestus as almost entirely, maybe entirely being based on genitalia. So that's sort of the future, which is not pretty, and we already have problems. For example, I don't tell the female Hylaeus modestus from the Hylaeus affinis. Mitchell and Orum's work does have a guide to that. However, I have to say, after looking at bazillions of them, I am unconvinced or ignorant. I'm not sure which. And so I always now do affinis/modestus for a female type of thing in this group, and I separate out the males, which are separate out very nicely by looking at the antennal scape. So the antennae scape are completely black and in modestus, and have yellow markings on the outer edge, usually a little bit on the front face. We'll see as one on the smudge end of the spectrum. I only have one specimen in my collection. We've given away far too many, I guess, to show, but it would also have a very much more concave aspect to the outer edge. And this varies depending on how you locate the scape when looking at it. So right now, the scapes are angled inward a little bit. So they're angled toward each other. You want to, when looking at the scape, you want to have the face of the scape at right angles to your microscope screen, let's call it, so that you can look at both width and whether there's anything unusual about the width of it, which often includes, in affinis, at least a deeply concave outer edge. So we'll show affinis in a second. Additionally, people are often comparing, let me change the, oh, you see, I even have a scale bar on here now. Look at that. So you can also, another character here, we have the very standard modestus. So the F1, so here's scape, pedicel, F1, F2. I'm going to bump up the magnification here. So here is the pedicel again, and here's F1, here's F2. So F1, if one were to draw a line, next class, I hope to be sophisticated enough to draw a line with measurements. This will be, sorry, I'm getting over a cold, greater than half the length of F2. And we'll show pictipes, introduced species, but others have this too, where this is about the same, about halfway or less in terms of size. Subtle too. You can see that the scale doesn't change there. I have to change that on the program to meet the magnification I'm in. So I think that is largely what I'm going to talk about in terms of the facial characteristics. The mandible color and the labrum, which you can't see here because it's over the edge, their color is also useful. It's also in the guide as primary things. When we flip, which I'm going to now, to the back, we see another additional set of characters to look at, both color and sculpture. See if I can get it in there. And so this is where our abilities now to get the lighting right really helps out. So we're going to go all the way up. And what I want to show you is what I tried to show in the females, but because the lighting was not very well received, I think, So I'm going to jump back and change the lighting. What we're going to look at are the pitting. So here's the pits. You can see there's tiny spaces between them, but most are touching. It's very crowded, but you'll see an example of bigger pits and more crowding. And because we don't like to use words like bigger than or more than and have something to be quantitative at least, we often compare it to the parapsital line, which is right there. There's a central line too, essentially the same size. And I'm going to sneeze. And the pit size is about the same size as the parapsital line, or sometimes slightly smaller, but not larger. And there are clearly, even though they're foxed around with some shagreening or little tiny dull lines between the pits, different people call them different things. Those are, they're still, you can still see spaces. So changing the lighting directly, I can't go any higher power, sadly, but you can see the spacing and the pit sizes there, and the surface sculpturing, which between, I'll just point out, between the pits, it's flat, right? There may be small shagreening, tessellation, whatever you want to call them, small microscopic reptilian lines running throughout there, but it's flat. It's got no topography. Let me change the lighting here. Oh, wait, I think it escaped. Okay, so let's slide up a bit more light. Look at that. And we will jump back to our full screen mode, and you can see this a little bit better. You can see the width of the parapsital line a little bit better here, and roughly that pit, these pits are about the size of the parapsital line. Okay, also, now that we're here, we're noting things such as the fact, let's go down a couple notches.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Sam, that might be actually a little bit bright and washed out.
Yeah, I just wanted to get the black back, so we can scale it back now.
It is pretty remarkable, though.
Now, so we'll bring it back. What we're looking at here are patterns of color patterns. So the presence of yellow markings on the pronotal collar. So
Make it
there's,
big.
oh yeah.
Thanks.
So you're welcome. So the patterns of yellow on the pronotal collar, some species it's all black, some species it's yellow. Be aware that sometimes in the species that normally have yellow, the markings become tiny little smudges, this entire area might be now restricted down to a single line of yellow. Every once in a while, it's just gone. So if you have a long string of the same species, and then you have something that looks remarkably similar, but has no yellow on the pronotal collar, be aware, be careful. It might just be the same thing. The tegula sometimes has yellow, sometimes does not have yellow. There's this feature of the wing over here, which is some kind of secondary plate. I believe it has a technical name. I don't know what it's called. That sometimes is yellow, sometimes not. That very well may be associated with one of these new species, but at this point, it's unclear. So since we're
Isn't
here,
the talbot in the females with the affinis, or like one of them?
Pardon?
Isn't the tell with the female affinis that there's a yellow mark on both the tegula and that second shield?
You would wish that to be the case.
Well, I thought it was like one of the things in the group of.
Yeah, so
If you're between the two, it might be this one.
So we hope that's going to be the case. So you should be aware that you might be looking at affinis if you have yellow markings both here and on this this little secondary plate, whatever it's called. But one of these other modestus species possibly may have that too. It's not clear. Hopefully, our friend in Canada will clear that up. Okay, let me now, I'm going to swap, since we were just looking at a back, I'm going to swap out and go to Hylaeus ornatus. And the reason to do this is ornatus has the back sculpturing that is a group of species similar to it have, which is, I'm going to get rid of the label, which is more overlaps a lot, maybe almost entirely, and the surface between the pits are raised, and there's topography to that. Let's see if we can see that pretty well, and see if our parapsital line marker, I'm going to change this a little bit. See if I can get a better view of the side that doesn't have the pin through it. This is one of the reasons we like gluing a little bit better. Smaller the B, the more that gluing obliterates things. So I'm going to play with the lighting here a little bit. And then we will zoom in on this. This is hopefully a good example. So you can see in this one, both the pronotal collar and the pronotal lobe are bright yellow. And also you also see white specimens that are white or bright white. Okay, let's change the, and that's often species specific, but every once in a while you will get some of the normally yellow ones turning whitish, particularly the modestus group that scares everybody. All right, I'm just going to jack up the lighting for now. That will burn out a lot of things, but hopefully make the picture a little bit better. But you know what? I'm not sure. I think I have a better specimen than this one. Just get that out here. I want to show the red abdomen. There's these black abdomen ones there. And so ornatus can have a black abdomen. It's not supposed to, but we've figured that out at least now. And it can have a red abdomen, like hopefully we'll see here. Oops, I am showing the dirt. Oh, there we go. So you can see the nice red abdomen in this one. That would be the classic case.
I got pulled into another conversation for a second. Can you repeat what species you have on deck?
Yeah, this is ornatus. I'm going to do the take off the label thing. So this is Hylaeus ornatus.
And you're also showing us in the small screen.
Okay, has the light the yellow abdomen. Now I'm going to zoom in and go full screen on you to the pitting on the scutum. We may have to change the lighting again. I'm sure we will. So orientation, there's the pin. Here's the parapsital line. Here's these pits, much larger, and they all seemingly overlap. And we'll take a couple different shots of this. And the surface topography is roughened because there is topography around the pitting. So it's not completely flat. You don't see those little inscribed lines anywhere. We're at my highest magnification, so we're not going to get a whole lot better than this. And if I'm going to subtly shift the lighting around so that hopefully you can see some of this topography. It's more pronounced as we go towards the shoulder than it is behind, but that combination, large size overlapping surface topography, sets it into a group of specimens such as Schwartzii, ornatus, nelumbonis, and I think this one in Florida whose name I can't recall, that sometimes I think is just a black ornatus too, compared to the parapsidoline. Let's take a look now that we have ornatus here. We'll just take a quick look at its face. These are all the, I think maybe the entire group is associated with wetlands. So Schwartzii, I'm going to bring the color down. Schwartzii, there's not a whole lot to see here really. You can see a fairly normal, I'm not going to tweak it too much. You can see a fairly normal scape. I want to show a couple of things that are quite a bit different. So the face is similar to modestus, a little more rough on the top. The pits are overlapping each other up there at the back, and particularly the orange in this case. But again, recall there are black ornatus out there to trick everybody. So let me get another specimen. Go with mesillae. So mesillae is also one of the most common species. It's very small. It, according to Ryan, and I don't doubt it, there are more than one species involved here. Also, in this group, a quick look here, and I'm going to bring down the lighting. There is a pronotal collar with no color on it whatsoever. So let's go back here and take down the lighting a little bit. Then we'll go back to, well, we're going to go to higher magnification. Take a look at the back so you get familiar with several different back patterns. You can see already, even at this tiny little level, there's a lot of shine that's to the back. You don't have that roughened area there. And you can see that the pits and pitting is relatively small compared to the parapsidoline. Again, when we look at the face, it's pretty distinctive. That and the combination with the black pronotal collar usually allows you to lock in to the species. There are some rare Hylaeus that have this curved face too, in tiny, often, but not exactly the same way. So this is one of those things where you both want to memorize characters, but if something seems a little off, you might double check. So first of all, in comparison to what we saw before, you do have the whole lower face is yellow as usual. You have a scape here. 5. You've got a scape here.
Can you scooch it down a little bit? The antenna are really cut off. It makes it not super clear.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep. So I'm going to bring the scape into focus here. So the scape have yellow on this outer side, which is similar to lots of species. If they're going to have yellow, it's just going to be in the outer side. In fact, I don't know that any of them have full yellow across the entire area. And if we look now at the maculations or the markings, the light colored markings, you can see they pull away from the compound eye edge and curve around the base, the fossa, the base of the antennal segment, and they're rounded at the end. So that's a classic mesillae move. Look to it. You can see here the pit's small, a fair amount of shine between them. The scape is not greatly expanded. So that combination usually gets you right to mesillae. And I'm going to, again, when trying not belabor, because we'll be out of time. And I feel like we've been on Hylaeus way too long already. So let me show you another species.
Y'all's is quiet in the chat today. Anything, any Q&A needed? You can send me an email too if you are not chatable.
We talked about affinis, so I think I should show you a male affinis. Male affinis have a very cool feature. I don't think it was in Ryan's key, but Mike Arduzer, I believe, was the person who discovered this, which is on S. This sadly, this specimen will not be able to show it because there's glue on S2. So the sternite 2 has at the base of the sternite two very low but very discernible mounds to either side of the midline. I have never seen this in any other kind of bee, but in Hylaeus males, it's if you have the ability to see the sorry, I'm doing two things at once. To see the sternites, those two low mounds are completely distinctive. So here's a good example. So often in affinis, you get these clipped tops. So it looks almost exactly like modestus. This is not something that you can count on, but the fact that it comes up and cuts over, truncate, I guess would be the call, is useful. Here's the scape, and notice that the amount of yellow on there is super small. So it's usually less than half, but here in this case, you just have a little smudge at the base on the outer edges is all it's going to give you in this particular specimen. Additionally, there is, let's see if we can bring some light in here and move the cursor. If we look at the outer edge, it's not the exact view I want to see. This outer edge of the scape, very concave. So that's another indicator of affinis. So let me move on to another specimen. Going to leptocephala. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, we shifted that pretty quickly. There didn't seem to be any yellow on the pronotal collar. I don't know if that was the case or it was very restricted. If we have time, we can go back and look at that. But that happens where the yellow on the pronotal collar seems to be the one that's the flakiest. Okay, this is a specimen of, let me get the lighting here a little bit better. Hylaeus leptocephala. It is one of the very earliest, I'm going to take the lighting down, the very earliest introduced bees to be discovered. It's back in the teens was the first time, and from North Dakota. Why North Dakota? I have no idea. Originally. And now going to the white on the face is really, there we go. We can see the white better. That's what I want to show. I'm going to go to full screen here. It has and always has a very white, milk white, cream white. Did not work.
Make us full screen, please.
Yeah, trying to. I have to click in it. Okay, so the color is a bright milk white. sometimes the other specimens turn from yellow to a more of an off-white. So you often when you see this, you should be alerted that you're probably looking at one of the non-native species. Although I think maybe Schwartzii has a white aspect to it, to the colors on the front too. I'm not 100% sure. Here we see a scape. It's in this case, it's there is no scape or antenna over there, but in this particular case, you can see it's relatively thin. It does have this white marking here. There are probably some other characteristics. Let's take a look at the back to see if the collar is white, but usually, first of all, this is associated with very disturbed areas. So that's often a hint that it could be showing up. And then the other part is the white color. So there's the white maculations are showing up here. This is very characteristic. Let's zoom in here, and I believe we'll see both the tegula with extensive white on it. So there's the pronotal lobe, pronotum, tegula, and then that other little cover plate. I have no idea what it's called. So there's a tegula, has a big white spot on it. Here's this other tinier plate that is also bright white. And even the white is also on the legs and things like that. So you can see too the relative smoothness in the and the sheen and the lack of sculpturing really in the scutum and the pits and the area between the pits. And in comparison, this might be one we scored for both slightly bigger and about the same size as Parapsidoline. I'm not sure. Okay, let's jump to several introduced species within Hylaeus. So a new, let's see if we have ornatus. I believe I've got a male of that one. So Hylaeus and punctatus are both introduced species. They have this sometimes difficult to see, so we'll look for it too. Characteristic of the side of the mesepisternum towards the front. So there's a junction between the two that's has a clear carina or raised line. It's like a right angle. You see that in other groups of bees, Dianthidium and things like that. But in Hylaeus, it's only in this particular group where we're detecting that.
So which one is up and what is it? What is it? Companion?
This is Hylaeus. This is Hylaeus hyalinatus, more northern, and its companion is punctatus. They also, you can even see this right now. See how the pitting on the clypeus and the paraocular areas are much rougher than the ones that, if you were paying attention, the other ones had. We're looking at the scape here again. It looks like it is. I'm going to jack up the associated lighting. Let me get that going here. So you can see what's going on in scape. I believe it's slightly swollen. So let's take a look now that we have done that. So yeah, at minimum, the scape is quite different, more turgid. There's no concave outer area. It's all dark. I'm not sure I have the best absolute view here, but what we're looking at is a comparison to the flagellar segment. It's clearly wider than that. So that's our measurement, flagellar segment to scape. It quite a bit wider. Now let's see if we can find. Yeah.
When you said rougher texture, in reference to the face, did you mean like rougher texture in like more pitting that we saw, or more angular edges?
I was really referring to the deeper and more pronounced pits on the clipeus, which is usually a lot smoother in the other species, in other species groups, I should say. Okay, so I'm going to try and see. So the area that we're looking at is this area. Here's the mesepisternum, which is below. Here's the wing, pigula, pronotal lobe. Mesepisternum here. So the face is dark now, but what we're looking at is the anterior face. So all species have an anterior face to the mesepisternum, meaning it's facing forward, and then it curves over to the lateral face, which is the large face that we mostly spend our time looking at. Now, let's see if I can get a good angle on this. And then what we're going to look for is a sharp junction between the anterior and the lateral faces in this species. Let me just take a quick look here. We can kind of see it here already. I'm going to take a look and then we'll turn it even more upside down. Maybe if I turn it a little bit this way. And we're going to play with the light here in a second. So we're going to be looking down this edge. So there's pronotal lobe. This is the sharp edge, lateral face, anterior face. Legs would be tucked in there. For whatever reason, it has a sharp face now, and it is raised, has a raised line. You would not see that. It'd be just rounded over in the others. All right, let's bring in a whole bunch of light, way more than we want to see normally. That hopefully shows off the sculpturing a little bit more. So here's the start of the line. It runs down. I'm going to, oh, we are already at 5. This is a relatively small species. Get that out of the way. Running this up and down so you can see that sharp edge there. I'll do one more attempt at this. You can also see these are, I believe, relatively big pits compared to other species. Usually this is what you look for. You have the sharp transition. That means only 2 species can have that. And I'm going to turn this upside down. And then it's a question of, is it is it is it punctatus, or is it annulatus? Wow, that is way too much light. Oh, and we're looking at not a bee, but the surface. And then to tell the two apart, there are a few structural characteristics, but they're not great. And however, usually you can see what amounts to S8 on the. That's not showing up very well. Try it completely upside down now. This might work. These are also associated with very disturbed, junky weed areas with European weeds. All over cities. I just don't see them in the countryside unless it's like a roadside stop where you have a gas station. It's in the country, but the area around the gas station is just all weeds. And of course, you get out your net and do a little collecting. But it looks like an interesting weedy area. Okay, so I can't get higher in terms of the magnification, but here we have pretty clearly we're upside down, right? So there's the head. This is the mesepisternum lateral face. Anterior face is right through here. That's the pronotal lobe. This is the top of the bee here. These are the legs. And
Make
here's
us
that
big.
ridge. Oh, that's right. We can do full screen.
And are we, oh, you still have Hylaeus on deck, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's that ridge. How much time do I have left? Good. Okay. So here, this is pretty clear. So here's that difference, which is what people need to see, I think, before they get comfortable with it. So there's the ridge. I think we got it. Now, let's see if we can see S8. Usually it's poking out. It's like a popsicle stick here in the males. The females are I find tricky, and usually I don't get both, so usually I'm hoping that I see a male in amidst all the females. Males being just less common, but easier to identify. To nail the identification. So we'll zoom in. What we're looking for is the very rear of the male. Usually you flip it over like we've done here, so the sternites are exposed rather than the tergites on top. And what you're looking for is S8, which in most bees is just not visible. Visible in this, gosh, I'm not sure it's visible in the other Hylaeus even, but it's visible here, visible in male Andrina. That's useful character for that one. But what you're looking at is basically this gigantic, it's very large structure. What is it used for? I don't know. Large, basically lollipop here. Let's see if I can change the magnification a little bit. Yeah, it's rounded at the top. It comes in. I can't remember quite off the top of my head. I mean, it's in the guide. I believe the difference is whether it's stalked like this or broadens out all the way towards the bottom and is less lollipop-like in punctatus. So that's that particular group. Let's see, we'll jump to annulatus, a northern species. Sometimes gets peas out towards the mesillae, but it's quite a bit larger.
So yeah, in the guide, when you're looking at Hylaeus versus punctatus, that SH to confirm S8, what we just saw is attached by a long narrow stalk, while for punctatus, you'd be looking for that structure to appear as a large, round, transparent disc, broadly attached to the base by about 1/3 the width of the disc. That sounds like another one of those nice things where you need two to compare.
Great, are really good pictures. And I have learned recently that David Bittinger from Pennsylvania, who runs the Penn State's, I don't know exactly how to explain it, but he's down in Penn State at one of their research stations, got a bunch of money to update the pictures and the wording and associated files and getting better drawings or photos of many of the species in Discover Life. So, and Rob Jean, a friend from many years, is, I think, going to lead that up. To be determined. I haven't heard when the next meeting is going to be, but something to look forward to. We're always trying to make the guide better and more participants. The better.
Woo!
Clare is working on them now too. So yeah, I try to stay out of the way, but just be the traffic cop. Okay, so we're looking at, oh, that's actually an interesting shot here. So we're looking at Hylaeus. What are we looking at? Annulatus. And here we have a very clearly wide scape. We're looking at it actually in a view that normally you wouldn't look at, which is from the back side. And here it appears to be all yellow. We'll turn it around and look on the front side, and it should be half and half. But massively wide, but not as wide as we see in basilis. And also a lot of, we need to tone down the coloration here. So I'll direct you to, I'm going to spin this so we get a better look at the edge. Oops, there we go. So here's a nice shot of a widescape outer edge with the yellow again, but a fair amount of yellow. I always think of them as half and half, but perhaps I'm just overseeing the yellow. And you can see that this distance here is at least approaching twice the width of the flagellar segment. So it's very noticeable. Additionally, if I'm going to change the exposure. Bring the exposure down a lot. There we go, emphasizing the maculations. And what we want to look at here is the pattern around the antennae. There we go. So I'll change the view on this, so hopefully it'll be better, but this is actually not a bad view. Recall in mesillae that the markings diverged from the eye and went around the base of the antennal segments. It does that here too. These are a bit more pointed. And here's the other end. And you see, and a little bit longer. So not the greatest of characters in comparison, but look at this. You've got this gigantic scape here. That's going to help almost no matter what. It should be relatively easy to key out. So I'll show one more specimen. There's also, yeah.
We have a conversation in the chat hypothesizing about that SH feature. Laurel suggests that Hylaeus are wood cavity nesters. Is the abdominal stalk related to retrofitting wood cavities? And Melissa observes that they've seen Hylaeus nesting in rock cavities, so it probably depends. If you have more thoughts, bring them up.
But the males don't do anything in the nest, as far as I know. So why bother?
That's a good point.
If you're a female, yeah, they modify their back ends all the time. So I'm not going with that one. But maybe there's something maybe they do something that other bees don't do. I mean, it has to be there for a reason, right? That's a lot of feature. Okay, we're looking at another recent addition. This is the most recent addition to the Hylaeus community, I believe, in North America. There might be another up in Quebec, or was this the one that was first? Norman Dean, I think, found it, but I could be wrong on all accounts. But this is fairly recent. They're now known to occur in, so this is pictipes. They're now known to occur, I believe, in Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And so they're probably in the other areas adjacent. Maybe someone has more information. I think we picked one up actually in Richmond recently too. Was that true? Yeah, I think I saw it in, was it Rob Ostrom's stuff? I can't remember. Too many people I'm looking at.
We have a comment. Communist is the other most recent Hylaeus introduced to Canada.
Say it one more time. Sorry,
Communist is the other most recent Hylaeus introduction in Canada.
Okay, good. And I think is that the Quebec one? I think.
Melissa, what do you know?
Melissa.
I'll let you know when I get a response.
Okay. All right. Here, very common pattern. I don't know what subgenus it is. It may be also in this one of the other subgenera, but here we have this common pattern. This one has quite noticeable pitting again, which our modestus affinis groups does not have. It is white to off-white in the males. There's a variability I've seen. There is a scape, which I believe is narrow. We will play with the lighting with the yellow on the outside. And let's jack up the lighting so we can see our scape things there. This also has, all the species have convergent eyes. So instead of the interior edges of the compound eyes being parallel, which a lot of bees have, these are strongly converging or diverging at the top, converging at the bottom, which I found to be noticeable. And we're also going to look at the antennal segments here in a second. So there we go.
Melissa has confirmed that it is to Quebec and has added in the chat the paper citation for it.
Oh, good.
Fantastic.
What a great group. So here I do need to add that specimen. That's a very common European species too, by the way. But I do need to now add that to the guide, which I have not done because it's going to, well, it's in North America. So it's something that needs to be added. So here you can see relatively narrow scape, only a little bit bigger than the flagellar segments. We're also looking at antennal segments, and we're seeing that so scape, pedicel, F1, F2. So F1 is about half to a little smidge less than half. You can see this over here too, less than half the distance. This is just the typical subtle differences that require some precision in quantifying when you're looking at bees, but this constitutes a relatively short flagellar segment, F1, so the first flagellar segment. So I can't remember if there's anything else here in terms of the males. They just feel different when you see them. Females even more so, I think. But a lot of it is based on gestalt. So I don't know what they would key out to be. Well, they now key out in the guide for sure. Looks like we may, oh yeah, I remember this species, I would think it wouldn't be so variable, given that it probably only came over with a few specimens, but the amount of, this is a good illustration, the amount of light area in the pronotal collar seems to vary from nothing to a small amount to a fairly large amount in there. So that's something to be aware of. Here you can see that the pitting is relatively well spaced. A lot of these pits don't even touch one another. And there's the sort of usual background of tessellations and such. I don't see a parapsital line. This is probably a parapsital line, but relatively small pits.
Sam, do you have any saniculae to show I'm just scanning the guide, overall, the conspicuous oval depression between the ocellus? Or outside the ocellus?
I don't. For some, our saniculae sadly had an accident and the head got busted off and disappeared. So no, but it's super noticeable, and the specimen so they're very rare. So if you get one, that's a really good bee. I believe Melissa, didn't you get some in northern Ohio? So
You just
I
said
think,
she did.
yeah, and they don't have a pattern. They seem to be a little bit more Midwestern, and I don't know why they show up in some places or others. I mean, Melissa's study, I think, had a strong urban disturbed component, but yeah. So usually rare things are not from urban areas; they're from more biodiverse areas. So, but very cool bee. There's others I don't have examples of. Sparsus, for example, the coxal front coxae have literal spine, a spine coming out of it. It's the outer edge is just prolonged out to a spine. Why? I don't know. There's a couple other species with pretty distinct facial patterns, Fedorica. So I think I'm about out of specimens of interest right now to show and illustrate some of these points. And we're probably close to our time.
We're at time. Melissa says that she caught that specimen from an eastern woodland foraging on Apiaceae.
Oh,
The one I caught was not from Cleveland.
okay.
And
Okay.
scrolling through the characteristics, I think we did hit on most of the things that were particularly unique and interesting, and that this community should see and isn't super redundant to our skill sets.
Yeah.
But there are things in here about mandibles and labrum. They seem basically like, yes, it is black or yellow, or not. Is there any other nuances there that you feel are worth sharing? Otherwise, I think we've gone through the bulk of the characteristics here that are
a lot of these are the kinds of things, again, you want some reference collections. So for example, T1, whether there's a presence of minute, often extremely minute pits or not, is useful, but a lot of times you start second guessing yourself. Am I looking at something extremely minute or absent? Is that a pit or is that not a pit in some of these situations? And you have a lot of, particulars like, am I looking at a sparsely pitted or thickly pitted on some of these areas where you're asked to do those comparisons? You have color characters that are good until they disappear. And so sometimes it's problematic. So if you need to, my main thing is to go through the guide with precision. If you're not sure or about a character as usual, I should point out, then don't score it for that or come back to it later, or do what I often do is like click on it to see what happens and then click it back off and keep going. So, and keep aware that these species, particularly the introduced ones, are very good at jumping onto plant material and going to a completely new place. Thus the going from northern Pennsylvania to Richmond, Virginia thing. And new species may show up too.
Cool. Well, we do have a correction. The Siniculae specimen was in an urban park. And some nice iNaturalist links. But here's your opportunity to ask any last questions or concerns.
All right, I'll mention that Clare is going to start hunting down and pinning to the wall some of our bumblebee friends who mentioned that they would do bumblebee identification talks, guides, walkthroughs of various kind in the coming months. And otherwise, we will, between bumblebee talks, we will populate this time with additional species. Maybe hoplitis next. I don't think we did hoplitis, but hoplitis would be a good next one. They're out now. We could also do osmia. Spring bees.
Yeah, I don't. I have some things on our request list I need to go back in and remember what we've done. So if you have any more requests, you know, always let me know. We have somebody wants to see Hylaeus, and yeah, that's what I got. Nemata and Spicotes. No,
Yep.
I'll keep a list, and
we can do all those. Nemata and Spicotes. We'll get Mike back in for Spicotes, and Nemata can do that too. Those are your nuanced pairs, that's for sure.
Maybe Rob will join us for Andrina.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody for bearing with us the last 2 weeks. Hopefully we'll be back to smooth sailing now. I am gonna
Of course we are.
Well, of course we are. We are just as just a declaration. We are back on smooth sailing. Okay. Well, everybody have a good week, and see you later.